So first and foremost, thank you all for agreeing to meet with us. My name is Sarah, and we are the Teen Services librarians who have been working toward building a more effective teen program and space within the library system. When we heard about the consideration of combining teen services and children's services within the library system, we asked to meet so that we could present on current research and best practices regarding teen services, as well as recommendations we have to improve upon teen services as seen through examples at one branch in particular. First, we will look at the advantages of having a dedicated teen space and the disadvantages of combining teen and children's services. Next, we will hear best practices surrounding and recommendations on how to maintain a dedicated teen space. Third, we will hear about best practices and some ideas to improve teen programming and recruitment. Lastly, we are lucky to have a guest speaker from the Teen Advisory Board with us representing a teen perspective. You will hear from her throughout our presentation. After our presentation, we will leave you with a list of our resources from current research so that you can reference it while making your final decision. I would like to start by discussing some of the disadvantages of combining teen and children's services. So along with researching prominent scholars in the field of young adult services in library sciences, I also spoke with teen and children's librarians in other library systems to gather some of this information. As you will hear throughout this presentation, teens' needs are not the same as children's needs. More than that, teens do not like to be thought of or treated as children. Children's spaces in libraries are often, as exemplified at this branch, physically set up to serve young kids. Shelves are low to the ground, desks are low, there might not be a lot of computers in this area, etc. So straight away, having teen services in the children's section of the library is going to add a barrier to teens accessing services. Also, most programming coming from children's librarians, even when labeled as a family program or event, is geared towards toddlers or young elementary school aged children and their parents. So though teens are clearly a part of a family, having programming labeled as such, but then to not include teen interest, will create a sense that teens are an afterthought. To be fair to children's or youth librarians, their job is and should be to dedicate their time serving children. Asking them to also plan programming, advocate for, and maintain library space to best serve teens is really just asking them to do two different jobs. So when training to become a certified librarian, classes differentiate between children's and teen services. This reinforces that children's and teens' needs in the library are inherently different, developmentally as well as what is demanded of them. So though not the primary reason many teens come to the public library, academic needs of teens are much different from those who are in elementary school or even in early middle school. Since many adults are already biased towards teens due to the undeserved bad reputation throughout the media and society at large, many other teen-appropriate venues already do not cater directly to teens or outright discourage their patronage. Jennifer Velasquez, an expert in her field, states space is power. So maintaining a space dedicated to teens in which teens feel welcome in the library will support teen patronage much more than with combined services. For this to be their space, teens need to feel an ownership of it and feel seen, heard, and respected for who they really are. And now that I've laid out some of the disadvantages of combining children's and teen services, let's examine some of the advantages of having a dedicated teen space and teen services librarian. As I stated previously, training to work with children, teen, and adult patrons are all a little bit different, and the skills required to work well with each clientele are different. Therefore, making sure each library has a teen librarian will ensure that each branch has at least one staff member that is not only trained and comfortable working directly with teens, but is focused on ensuring teen patrons are being considered, advocated for, and catered to in the library programming and collections. Teens will not want to work or interact with staff who are clearly uncomfortable with their presence. Staff who is not versed in how to work with teens may not know how to get to the heart of what will best support teen patrons. Velasquez also states that if most staff are uncomfortable with teens or unaware of how they tend to occupy a space and interact with each other, the rules may be more strictly enforced or non-existent rules may be placed onto teens. This is especially likely to happen if teens do not have their own space within the library. So an example of what that might look like in practice is is being kicked out of the library for being too loud while engaging in a perfectly library appropriate activity. Also, while for some teens there will be crossover between children's collections and teen collections, much of the crossover happens between the adult collection and the teen collection. According to a 2012 study, 55% of consumers of YA books are over the age of 18. Many teens read young adult literature, but also books marketed for or organized into the adult sections. Having a space that actively celebrates and caters to teens that is out of the children's area, in my opinion, supports teens' migration from childhood into adulthood while offering them the literal space to be who they are as teens. Lastly, I would like to add that the Teen Advisory Board is one place for us to start to elicit more teen involvement in the library system as a whole. The Teen Advisory Board offers crucial knowledge about what interests teens, what would help them feel welcome and empowered in a library space, and opinions about how to best utilize a space. Giving teens some input will help them have some ownership over the space and give librarians a better idea of what is currently on their minds to help direct programming. Paraphrasing another thought by Velasquez, it is important to allow teens to be creators and not just think of them as consumers. Teens are not always offered a lot of autonomy over their lives, so this is a way to help teens become more involved and invested in the library. Later, you will be hearing from our guest speaker, Siva, who is on the Teen Advisory Board and has graciously volunteered her time to explain what improvements can be made to how the advisory board currently operates, and also give some teen insights into how the library can become a destination for teen patrons. And I would like to conclude my portion of this presentation with a thought brought to my attention by authors Bernier and Males, other experts in the field of library sciences. Even if a child is very engaged with the library at a young age, but then feels unwelcome as a teenager, are we not risking losing our future adult patrons? Thank you for your time. I will pass the microphone to Kaitlin, our next speaker.
Thank you, Sarah. I am Kaitlin, and I'm going to be talking a little bit more about teen space and why we should keep the teen space separate than the children's space. One very visible result of combining the children's and teen sections would be the redistribution of the current teen space. As we are only a few blocks away from the local high school, the loss of a dedicated teen space would even further decrease the involvement and use from local teens. Teens are a weird group, as they aren't children anymore, but they aren't fully adults, and their space needs to offer them something special and separate. On this slide are two quotes from two teen services librarian specialists, Anthony Bernier and Mike Males, who both make the point that teens deserve a separate space, as they are a separate, central demographic that our libraries serve. We have a duty to give them a space that they can call their own, and while it doesn't have to be big, it needs to be something teens find accessible and for them exclusively. When teens come to the library, their purpose is likely different from either children's or adults. While children may be brought along by their parents, teens are old enough to make their own decision to come to the library. That means we now have to compete for their attention with other places, such as the local mall or a bookstore. Whether it's on a weekend for an extended period of time, or the 15 minutes while waiting for a bus after school, or even a research or study section to do homework, there are many ways a teen space can be used. We have to offer teens a space that they can come to, and to do that, we have to speak to the teens themselves. Teen involvement should not be something that is tacked on to a library space after the fact, but something that needs to be integrated into the building of the space from the get-go, as Wendy Lesko mentions. To get this started, our teen representative, Siva, has a few thoughts on what she wants to see from our library's teen space.
Hi, I'm Siva Ramakrishnan. I'm part of the Teen Advisory Board, and we heard that there aren't enough teens using the library. So the library feels like maybe we don't need our own space. I'm here to say, wake up, people. There are so many teens right around this library. Our town's high school is 3 blocks away. I think maybe one problem is that we don't feel like this space is really meant for us. There are little kids in here with their parents. The parents sometimes look at us funny, especially if we're lounging or have our feet up on the tables. And sometimes they even shush us. It's not comfortable. Okay, so in my research for this presentation, I found this picture from Brooklyn Public Library. Look at these teens. They look happy and comfortable and like they belong in that space. And in my opinion, that's what we deserve here too. This is a picture I found from Boston Public Library. And you can see there's art up on the walls, and it looks like maybe teens actually made that art. We deserve our own space that is just for us. And don't get me wrong, I think babies are super cute, but they have their own floor with toys and baby stuff. I'd like to be able to play board games and video games. I'd love for this to be a place where teens can perform music or read poetry, but mostly we need a space where we can just hang out. If you create that, I think more teens will come. This public library has an obligation to create a space whose goal is to serve the number of teens who are actually in our town, not the number of teens who happen to walk through the door.
Siva brought up a lot of great points. Males on the left of this slide offers us a list of other points that teens may want to see from their library space, and several of them coincide with things Siva mentioned, such as being an active space that accommodates teens wanting to hang out whenever. Both Sherry Cook and L. Megan Kuhlman, 2 more teen services specialists, have results from different teen surveys that show that, while all teen demographics are different, there are commonalities between what they want or expect from a library space. Sometimes they don't line up with what we as librarians think that teens want, which is why we have to ask teens like Siva themselves. Teens just want to feel comfortable and welcome in the library, and a dedicated teen space is one way to do that. There are many problems that could arise from combining the children's and teen sections. This could alienate teens, making them feel like they are still just young children that don't have the right to have a space to themselves. Teens have an agency that young children do not, and if we imply that they don't, why would they want to come back? As Sherry Givens says, teens and children have wildly different information needs and reasons for using the library. Their spaces should also reflect that, giving teens more options on how they want to use the space given. What we ultimately want to do is to give teens a space to themselves, trusting that they know how to behave within a library space. Even if it is a smaller space, teens will acknowledge that we have given them something that is uniquely theirs to do with as they please. This could be as small as their own tables, bookshelf, and a dividing wall. While we may not have the resources to completely overhaul the space, by keeping it separate, there are still some ways we can improve the space and, in turn, entice teens to come use the space. All we have to do is listen to the teens and do our best to meet their needs. Now I will pass the mic back to Siva to hear some of her thoughts on programming.
Hi again, I am Siva Ramakrishnan, and I was on the Teen Advisory Board. And so, to be honest, it wasn't the worst, but it was a little boring. The ideas that the librarian had felt a lot like school, like let's all research a topic and make a PowerPoint or something about it, or even like, let's all make friendship bracelets, which like can be fun, but we're not all into the same thing. It's not that all of the ideas were bad or anything. It's that our own ideas about what we'd like to be able to do at the library or activities that we think we could even lead weren't considered. Some of the teens who showed up originally to the Teen Advisory Board, but who stopped coming, I know for a fact that they are at Dunkin' Donuts playing Magic the Gathering right now. I'm into Magic too. Most of us have our own decks, but if you guys could get me some booster packs, I could set up a legit tournament like the one you see in this picture here. And I can guarantee you that my friends would come and they would love to play Magic the Gathering with me. I have this picture again here from Boston Public Library just because I loved all of the art on the walls so much. And I've got friends who don't have the space or materials at home to do art. Like, this is another kind of program that I would be really interested in leading. And I actually have friends who I bet would also be interested in leading an art program for me, my friends, and anyone else into drawing or painting. So this next slide shows a picture I found from Chicago's U-Media library. So they gave teens art materials. This looks like silkscreen printing. And it looks like they've learned how to use the equipment, and then they're just able to figure out what they want to do with it. This looks like so much fun. And I already know so many friends who are amazing artists. So if you could give us access to these resources and give us a space where we can use them, we would love that. And I think there would be many of us who would come. And even better, if you could let us teach each other how to use stuff like silkscreen printing equipment, I think we would really enjoy that too, because it would just feel like the space is ours and even the materials are ours too. Thank you.
Hello and welcome. We acknowledge that attendance at teen programming events has been low, but we also recognize programming as a core library service that supports our mission of empowering our community to learn and create. That core service should be provided equally to all patrons, as outlined by the American Library Association in their statement that we provide the highest level of service to all library users. We propose that rather than assuming a lack of interest on the part of teens, we need to ask teens what they're interested in and make sure that we're providing that at the times that work for them, just as Siva has pointed out. As in a retail model, when a product doesn't sell, we don't ask what's wrong with the customer. We change the product. So we envision changing the way that we have been approaching teen programming so that we can ensure that we are providing the highest levels of service to all of our patrons, including teens. This is especially important during this time as we all re-emerge from COVID shutdowns. The library should be a place where everyone can reconnect and re-engage with community. Craving community is a normal human desire, and it's even more critical during the teen years. Teens are not children, nor are they adults. They have different ways of interacting with the library staff and with each other. They have different social and developmental needs. While children arrive at the library with caregivers and are supervised while here, teens usually come alone and must navigate the library on their own or with the help of library staff. For that reason, we know it's important to limit teen programs to only those aged 13 to 18. Velasquez outlined how teens will often not attend the programs that include children and adults, as that changes the complete dynamic. We have looked to premier thinkers and researchers in the field of library and teen services to develop new goals and processes for our library that we believe will transform teen services here. These include Denise Augusto, an associate professor in the College of Information Science and Technology at Drexel University. She shared that we need to talk to teens about their goals for using library resources and services and make these goals ours as well. Taking up this approach, Augusto found that libraries support teens in their social lives by providing a safe physical space as well as meeting their information needs. Her work builds off others, including Kunzel and Hardesty, who advocated a teen-centered approach, as shown here on this slide. Additionally, we studied the work of Jennifer Velasquez, referenced above, teen services librarian at San Antonio Public Library and the author of Real World Teen Services, published by the American Library Association. She shared that for teen services to be successful, they must provide avenues for teens to take on leadership roles in developing, creating, and implementing those services. She stated, we must recast teens from patrons to partners and producers of programming. For real success, we as teen librarians must become facilitators of programs rather than developers and implementers. This is a very different model than that of children's programming. We also know that funding concerns are real and often overwhelming. However, we think we can implement the needed changes in our library with no funding increases. We will begin by connecting with teens and asking how they want to use the library and what types of activities they would love to see happening here. As you know, this process has already begun with Siva, who's here today. She has already given us some good ideas about how to start with simple games and craft materials. In fact, she will be running a gaming program one afternoon every week. The mission of our teen programming needs to change from attendance numbers only to include providing teens a means to participate, leadership opportunities, and to support their connection to the library. We think we can demonstrate success within a couple of months if we begin shifting our focus now. We want to create a variety of options, really whatever the teens themselves want. This might include regular scheduled events, spontaneous events, large-scale one-time events, as well as drop-in anytime events and activities such as crafting or art offerings. To involve teens more in programming, we'd like to reach out to area high schools. We know that at least 2 nearby schools have volunteer hours requirements, so we plan to attend their volunteer fairs at both schools this September to promote creating programs in the library as a volunteer opportunity for teens, and it would allow for leadership and creativity. Working in this way also follows the guidelines outlined by YALSA to promote leadership, learning, creativity, digital citizenship, literacies, and community. YALSA created teen programming guidelines that were adopted in 2015. These include carefully assessing the needs of teens in one's community, facilitating teen-led programs, and creating interest-based programs that connect with the community. They emphasize that training and adequate staffing for teen service librarians is a must. Toward that end, we've studied how to enliven our programs and are confident that we can do that. We especially want to focus our programming to position teens as experts that other teens and adults turn to, as outlined by YALSA. YALSA conducted a national forum in 2014 with the focus on reimagining and re-enlivening teen services. And this was my favorite quote from their program. Libraries used to be grocery stores, and now we need to be kitchens. They also said the library is no longer just a quiet place to connect to the physical content. It's a place of physical, virtual, and you need to learn how to connect and use resources of all types, from physical books to apps to experts in local, regional, or national community. It is a kitchen for mixing resources in order to empower teens to build, develop, understand, and create, share, and overcome adversity. Additionally, the forum concluded that for libraries to make this needed shift, 5 fundamental elements must change, including those listed here. Embracing our role as facilitator rather than expert, refocusing beyond our traditional roles and measurements of success, partnering strategically to reach beyond the library walls, creating a whole library and whole school approach to serving teens in physical spaces and online, and supporting the staff in gaining new skills. We thank you for your time and attention. And we hope that you will consider keeping the teen space and teen programming separate from the children's department. We hope that we've demonstrated the real need for teen space and programming that's different from other programs in the library. We know that the changes that we have planned, including reorganizing the space to reflect teen ownership and facilitate programming that teens have created and directed themselves, will transform our library from a place that teens sometimes come to a place that they want to be, and a place that they see as their own. We believe that the library can be a dynamic place for teens to socialize, learn, create, and develop leadership skills. Our ideas do not require an increase in funding, but only that we maintain our current funding level and transform our approach. Please let us know if there's any more information we can provide to support teens in our community. We look forward to making this a place, that teens truly want to be, and that can be a hub for our whole community.